Let's see, the meeting is called to order. It looks like we have quorum. Present is Meg Langford, myself, Anu Hubert, Mark Lips, Rick White, and Sydney Giberson. So we have a full quorum. Next item would be the minutes approval from last meeting, which we have right here in front of us. You guys took a look at it earlier today. Anybody is going to move to approve?
I'll make a move to approve the meeting minutes.
Second.
All right. Minutes are from last meeting are approved.
You have to go for a vote.
I'm sorry?
You have to call for a vote.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
You have to call for a vote.
Oh, we have to go for a vote. Ooh, my bad. So, approved. All right.
Everyone.
And unanimously approved. All right. Minutes. Yeah.
You have to ask all opposed.
All opposed. Minutes will be posted on the county website first thing tomorrow. Let's see. So on the agenda, the first item are public comment on any item that's on the agenda, or, well, we're going to talk about this today, actually.
Test. Can you hear me? Okay. So I talked to some of you as you're setting up the meeting, but just to formalize it,
Sorry, we need your name.
my name, to Tom Lasik. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries.
This agenda, I think, with all due respect, could stand some improvement. You have here any member of the public may speak on any agendized item for up to 5 minutes. How do you know what to speak to until after the agenda item has been presented? That's problematic. This is unusual related to what I see at the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, and the other advisory councils. And just to make sure it's on the record, what I normally see is there's the roll call, accepting of the previous minutes, and then there's public comment on anything that is not on the agenda. Things such as a festival coming up or a complaint about a pothole or what have you. At some point, the agenda is worked through, and at the end of each item, there's an opportunity for public comment, and then it's done. And that's the way it's done at Surth, Earthworth, Math, Cobb, Town Hall, Scotts Valley, Planning Commission, Board of Supervisors. So I encourage an improvement to that. The other thing I would also recommend is to increase participation. If you could put the Zoom link or the PEG TV link on the agenda. I had some people contact us and say, hey, how do I participate? We have some friends that are homebound and they listen into a lot of these community things. So if you could add that to the agenda, I think that would be helpful. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Most of it.
Yeah, so the streaming links should have been added to the agenda. They are, however, always the same ones. So they're posted on the Facebook account for BVAC, and they don't change from month to month. But I'll make sure from now on to make sure it's added to the agenda that's publicized, which is displayed at the courthouse, it's displayed online on the county website, it's displayed at the door here, and it's displayed also on the Facebook feed for this
Yes, thank
organization.
you. And I'm sure that's great, but again, if you're homebound, it's difficult to walk up to the courthouse or to,
It's
somebody.
also on the county's website.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
there's that page, on the county website. You have to dig a little bit to find it, but usually you, after some point, you find it. It lists all the area councils, the board of supervisor meetings, all that. You have the agenda of, upcoming meetings, and then you have the minutes in many cases, and then you have the link as well.
I understand. I'm just suggesting as an improvement to just include
Right.
it with the agenda. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Margot Kambara. I have a suggestion for the agenda, and that is, yes, agenda. A standing item, or a recurring item, perhaps you would like to consider adding announcements. And then when it comes to the minutes, I think it would be very helpful if they could be, even in draft form, posted on the county website. That way, people can read them before the meeting, and then your meeting can proceed a little faster, especially if there are no issues with the minutes. And then I have 2 announcements. May I?
Sure.
You're early.
July
Ho,
25th.
ho, ho, Big Valley. 'Tis a season to be prepared for disaster. From the state of California and the Scotts Valley Band of Pomo Indians Disaster Services are 2 brochures, courtesy of them. One is Disaster Ready Guide, and the other is First Aid Kit for Your Mind. And this is how to deal with stress, to be disaster ready, and how to deal with it post-disaster. My other announcement has to do with a meeting tomorrow at the courthouse at 9 a.m., and this is a planning commissioners meeting. It is one agenda item in particular is of interest to Big Valley residents, especially in the early days of the formation of this body. And that item is consideration of summary of cannabis policy recommendations and request for Planning Commission recommendations. So if you have an interest in this topic, please tune in or show up. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. Any other public comment? All right, I guess we're gonna move on to our first, to our next item, which would be the supervisor updates. I got the wrong glasses today. No, it's not the right one. That's the problem. I need to get my contacts.
All
back.
right. Good evening, everyone. Well, I wanted to let you know that the Canocti Trails website has gone live a couple weeks ago. So this is a project that the Canocti Trails project started over a decade ago, and a lot of planning into it for trail development, and then it was shelved, and then we brought back the project. So the website has a lot of the trails that are existing. We do have a lot of planning going on for new trails, so I encourage everyone to check that out. There's hiking, biking, water trails if you want to kayak. It connects you to Trail Fork to see the exact trail. So it's a new resource for everyone. Hopefully you'll enjoy it, and maybe some of our visitors will as well. We had our quarterly investment report last week, so I gave you a copy of this. I try to bring this to you quarterly after we get the investment report from our tax collector and our asset manager. And so you'll see going back before we hired our asset managers, we were making about $80,000 to $90,000 a quarter, and then we brought on the asset managers. We developed an investment strategy, and it's really grown over the years. So it reflects all of the holdings of the county and special districts and other districts that we hold their money, and so they earn interest with us now. So as you can see, we're in really good shape. You'll see little dips that happen around December, and that's just because we have liquidity. We have money coming in and we have money coming out, and so it kind of dips down when we've spent down, and then when we get property taxes in December, it goes back up again.
You're
So
welcome.
it's been really great having this strategy in place. We expected to see another year of increase before leveling out because no one was managing these funds for a long time before our current tax collector took over. And so we had a lot of catching up to do. Unfortunately, with the instability we have right now in our economy and the bond market, a lot of this is dependent on the bond market. We're probably not going to see that extra year of growth that we were anticipating. So we're going to see that leveling off probably this year, which is unfortunate. But it is the reality, so I just wanted to share that all with you. So again, this is not just county departments and county funds, but the school districts, the fire districts, special districts, all of everybody that we hold the money for has really been benefiting from this. So it's been a big improvement. Big shout out to our tax collector for making that happen and the board adopting the investment strategy. In 2 weeks, we're gonna have our budget hearings. If anyone is interested, it's 2 days, 2 full days, hanging out with the board. I have not seen the budget yet, so I can't tell you how much it was. Last year, I think we had about 400 million. So it's very exciting. We'll go department by department and adopt our preliminary budget, and then we'll do final budget in September. I want to give you an update on fire season. So I've been bringing this up every month because I really encourage everyone to get ready for fire season. We are in fire season now. Because of the last 3 winters that we've had have been really wet, we have a lot of growth. And so from CAL FIRE's reporting and from a report from Chief Tyler, who's the director of CAL FIRE, last week when I was sitting in on a meeting, we have on the landscape 4 times the amount of herbaceous growth that we would normally have this time of year. So this is the second highest year in 30 years. And we have a very hot, dry April, May, summer. Fire season has been expected to start early. It has. We're starting to see fires almost every day. Fires across the state have picked up well above average, and that is not including the winter fires in LA. So it's really critical that everybody do what they can for their defensible space. Zone 0, if you want to work on home hardening, you can go to Ready, Set, Go. There's a lot of resources with CAL FIRE to look at, but if you were going to prepare, this is the year to do it. It's a little unnerving to see the director of CAL FIRE say how nervous he is. So I just really encourage everyone to do your part. If you know of someone that is struggling, that needs help with defensible space, we have a grant program. The program is in place through our Resource Conservation District. It ran out of funds, but I have put discretionary funding into it to prioritize District 5 residents who need this help. So low-income folks, senior folks, people who are unable to weed eat or do what needs to be done, they can get around $2,000 worth of work done through this grant. So you can either direct them to the Fire Safe Council, which is part of the Resource Conservation District. That's firesafelake.org. Or you can just contact me, and I will make the connection. I want to make sure that we don't have any barriers this year, that anybody that needs help gets the help that they need. We know that if everyone does their part, our communities are stronger and safer. So I will just leave you on that note and then pass it over to my colleague, Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you. You may be aware of the Blue Ribbon Committee for the Rehabilitation of Clear Lake. If not, it was created in 2017 by the legislature to review and recommend projects for the health of Clear Lake to the state. So the reason I bring it up tonight is the current revised state budget is taking out all the money that would have funded projects approved in 23 and 24. So I still have some hope for some money this year only because of Prop 4, which was passed back in November. That had a provision that guaranteed $20 million from Prop 4 just for Clear Lake. So hopefully something's going to happen. But the committee for the rehabilitation has local, state, and other people, tribal people on it. We are going to be sending a letter to the state tomorrow from that committee requesting that please, put some of that money back. Lake Transit, if you're not aware, the Transit Authority recently gave out a new contract that ended up being a new provider. So the current company that was doing our transit drivers and our services is now being changed to another company, which ends up being a big savings. And it also was beneficial to the drivers. They're going to end up getting higher wages out of it. So there's a lot of positives, but because of the transition, they will not be operating on June 30th only. So the old company will go through June 29th. The new company will start July 1st. Unfortunately, there's no other way we could do that. One, Supervisor Pyska talked about the fire danger. One last thing, we did approve the fire hazard severity maps as drafted by the state of California. We didn't make any changes. So we've talked about that at this committee before. You guys saw those maps. One thing to be aware of, we had an item yesterday from our air quality district that was proposing some rule changes and also some fee changes, some fee increases. Some of the rules do need to be changed, and the fees haven't been updated for, I believe, 30 years, our local fees. So there's some stuff that's needed, but the supervisors did direct the air quality to bring us back kind of a side-by-side list on what the fee changes are going to be so we can have more discussion on that. We haven't made any final decisions. The last thing to note about that is there's proposal, and supervisors were in favor of it, to open up the burn, to end the burn ban on November 1st, to give people a little more time to burn. To do that, we're going to have to make some of the major holidays through the rest of the year non-burn days. But a lot of those, because under state standards, we can only burn a certain amount of days. So if we want to start 2 weeks early, we've got to have some days where we don't burn. So the proposal is to eliminate Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, things like that, to where a lot of people wouldn't be burning anyway because it's a holiday where most people are home. So, but if you have anything you want to, provide input on, that's going to be back in front of us in the next month or two. We are, as you may recall, we had an animal control director resign. He did agree to stay through June 30th to help us out. We have been interviewing folks and trying to hire. We just did more interviews yesterday, and things are looking good to be able to possibly get a new candidate in here. So we're going to continue to work on that in the next couple weeks. Lastly, we also, due to a resignation of our public health officer back in March or April, we did 2 weeks ago hire a new public health officer. This person has 40 years of experience in public health at the state, federal, and local county levels. So very highly experienced in all levels of government public health. So we're excited to get a person of that quality of experience. So hopefully, unfortunately, you can't get him started until September 1st, but in the meantime, we still have our contract health officers, but that's exciting news. And that concludes my report. And just since I'm up here, I believe Mr. Guintovano from County Council is the next.
Absolutely.
So I'll just introduce our County Council, Mr. Guintovano. He'll do training on the Brown Act for us. What was that? Oh, sorry. Questions about supervisor reports? Thank you, Jessica.
White Marilees. Question about the budget, and I know you guys are looking at budgets next week. Are you going to be talking about roads at all? Yeah, that's it. That's my question.
Yes, that will be part of our budget process. We did have some road items this week. I think we had to continue a couple of them, if I remember right, but roads that's a big part of our budget, so yes, we will.
Brad, in this new budget, is there any possibility that there is going to be a parks and events person who can promote the use of the lake and maybe even spur people to do events on the lake that'll bring people in and kind of
Yeah.
just revitalize the things that people talk to me about that happened back in the 80s?
Yeah, Supervisor Pyska may have more info, but I know that our Public Services Department is working on a rec program. They're trying to get some programs off the ground this summer. Do you have more information on that particular position? I believe it is something that is proposed that's going to come in front of us, so we're going to have to take a look at it. That's what I know right now, unless Supervisor Pyska has more detail.
I think it's about recreation programming, and it sounds like what you're talking about
Yes.
is maybe a little bit different. But we do have the Lake Rec Agency, which is a JPA between the cities and the county. So we meet monthly, and you could come to one of those meetings. We have both the cities and obviously county and staff. And so we've been talking about all of these things, and I'm going to be really careful so we don't have a Brown Act violation because there is another supervisor on that committee. But I will say that we, in the next few months, we'll be going back to our respective boards to get them caught up and make sure that our board, we're all in alignment with what's been going on. So there are some things that are happening, and we can talk a little bit more offline so that we don't
Okay.
have that violation.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are some things happening, and if you want to participate, just let me know and I can get you an invite to
Yeah,
those meetings.
absolutely. I was
Yeah.
just surprised when I found out that we don't have something listed as Parks and Recs or Parks and Events. Clear Lake hired someone, Charlotte White, and it's going gangbusters. Their summer programs filled up like that. They've got stuff going on the lake, but I think we need something a little more comprehensive on the lake, but anyway,
Yeah.
just a thought.
We do have we had a summer camp last year, and building on that, we've got more summer camps. Our public services director likes to say he's parks and clogging because that was literally the only recreation program that we had. And so we've been building on that because we know
Okay.
the community needs more. And so that's the focus of both Lars Ewing and his department and the Lake Rec Agency.
I do want to just add to one more little bit on the roads to Joy's question, just to make it clear out in the public, because there's been a lot of discussion about the road tax. So what has happened is our supervisors have directed staff to do an investigation of looking at the possibility of what it would look like if we were to consider putting something on the ballot. There's been no decision that we're going to do that whatsoever. We have asked the Public Works Director and staff to look into some things on that, bring us back a report for more discussion. But I've heard and seen things that we're putting something on the ballot, and that's not been determined. That is just not good information. It's just an investigation right now. And before we do something like that, we're going to want to hear from the public. So please stay engaged with monitoring what we're doing and give us feedback.
I'm actually going to propose that we skip item 5 on the agenda for a moment and move to item 6, since item 5 is directed solely at the board members rather than at the people who are here listening trying to get information on the meeting. I'm proposing that we skip item 5 and move to item 6. We'll take item 5 at the end, since that information is directed solely at the board members, rather than the people who are tuning in trying to get actual information from this meeting. Can I get a second on that?
Second, that's a good idea.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We're going to move to item 6. Go ahead.
Good call.
You're right. No, no. I agree.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Brennan. I'm with the Lake Area Planning Council. LAPC is Lake County's regional transportation planning agency and has been serving Lake County for 53 years. And LAPC has just recently launched a new initiative focused on energy efficiency for Lake County customers, ratepayers, called the Northern Rural Energy Network. I have a couple of slides, which I've emailed here to, did you receive it? If not, oh, there you go. Okay. Couple of slides here, and what I'd like to do, and thank you so much for the opportunity and your time tonight for me to get the word out about this program and how folks in your community can take advantage. So first of all, if you can go to the next slide, and actually if you can take off the notes section, that might be a little distracting for people, but let me just first introduce so the Northern Rural Energy Network, we are one partner of 4 partners in Northern California: Redwood Coast Energy Authority in Humboldt, Sierra Business Council for the 14 Sierra Nevada counties, Mendocino Council of Governments for Mendocino County, and of course LAPC for Lake County. We are a PUC approved program, one of a handful of rural energy networks designed to specifically serve rural utility customers. This is not a solar program, this is energy efficiency, which means reducing energy consumption and reaping the benefits from energy efficiency in terms of cutting utility rates. So we have 7 flexible programs that we are administering here in Lake County. The first is a residential education and outreach program, a residential rebate program, where we have a number of energy efficiency efficient equipment like heat pumps, hot water heaters, efficient refrigerators, appliances, etc. We have launched the first 2 programs in the residential sector. We are currently working on design for a finance program. We hope to administer either 0% or very low interest loan program for Lake County folks. We're also going to be designing a program for public agencies focused on public buildings, as well as commercial buildings, small businesses. A workforce education and training program focused on local contractors and young people who want to get into this field. And also we will launch a program focused on local government codes and standards around new building construction. Next slide. So for the residential program, the first component is our education and outreach. And this is really just general outreach and education about energy efficiency. We are attending local events. You might have seen us at the Lower Lake Days Parade, the Lakeport Farmers Market. We have a table, we have a lot of literature. We're getting the word out about not only these programs, but there are a whole other number of state-funded energy efficiency programs, as well as federal tax credits for insulation, windows, efficient appliances, heat pump technologies, heating, cooling, hot water. So we have information on a broad array of programs. The NREN programs have specific funding for Lake County through for the programs that I'm going through right now. We have launched our website. It's northernren.org, and it has all the information on the residential programs, and then there will be new information as the new programs launch. And we will be doing a host of, as I said, outreach, advertising, etc. So the two main components of the residential education and outreach program is that we are providing free energy efficiency kits to utility customers. And these are about $100 in value. It's a box about this big. It comes with 8 LED bulbs, water aerators, a smart power strip, rope caulking, film for windows, etc. And so those are being direct shipped to folks in Lake County. You can sign up online. There's an application. And the other component for residential is we are offering free home energy assessments, which we will conduct over the phone with Lake County customers. That's going to launch around the first week of August. It's been delayed a little bit. But those are the two main components of the education and outreach piece for residential. And then next for residential, to the next slide, is our, as I mentioned, our residential rebate program. If you go to our website, you can go to the rebate finder, put in your zip code, and it will show you what rebates that you're eligible for. So anywhere between $100 to several $1,000s. This program launched on April 10th. So if, for example, if you have or are in the process of installing a new heat pump water heater, as long as it's been within 90 days of your purchase and install with your permit, as of April 10th, you would get a rebate. And there's a whole host of equipment and appliances on that rebate. We hope to be adding in the future a specific rebate for Lake County for duct sealing and insulation, including for mobile homes, because we realize that there are a lot of mobile homes here in Lake County. Next slide. Finance program, as I mentioned, we're working with a third party to offer a 0 or very low interest loan across the board, micro loans, bridge loans. We are working with a third party right now to do a needs assessment to help inform the design of that program. Next slide. Commercial program design. This program is really going to prioritize small and micro businesses, but it also includes public sector buildings and nonprofits. Most likely, this program is going to include a free energy assessment similar to what we're offering at the residential level. Also a rebate catalog for non-residential buildings, and potentially some direct install, which means working with local contractors. And there could even be some technologies installed at no cost to the business. Currently, we're working with a third party. They're doing a needs assessment to help shape the design of this program. There's a survey that is being distributed starting this week to folks in Lake County. If you're interested, if you have a commercial building or you work at a public agency and you'd like to respond to the survey, I'm happy to leave my card tonight and you can contact me. We can get you that survey. And it's really about telling us, have you participated in energy efficiency programs in the past? What are the barriers to you participating? What are your the degree of your energy costs in terms of running your business or your nonprofit, etc. So that survey is live this week, and the third party will also be scheduling some interviews and focus groups as well. They're a company named ERI, so if you happen to get an email from them, they are legitimate and they are working for us, and they're actually even giving a gift card if you respond to the survey. Next slide. There you go. There's my contact information. I have brochures with me tonight that I'd love to pass out to you before I leave, as well as my card. And I also wanted to mention that we're doing a number of public events. Starting tomorrow, We're going to the Lucerne Alpine Senior Center, and then we're going to be going to Clear Lake and Lakeport and Middletown, where we are doing events with the senior centers during lunchtime. If folks bring in their PG&E bills, we will be able to get them a free energy efficiency kit during that lunchtime. And we're also planning a June 24th meeting, which is the first of a series of kind of public kickoff meetings for NREN. That will be held in Lakeport, where we're going to focus on energy efficiency in general for residential sector, and then we will present about the different NREN programs that I just went over, and then inviting a number of local contractors to be there so that people can talk with them, and we'll have kind of a show and tell component where they will be bringing some heat pump technologies and things where people can actually talk to contractors and get information about what things that they can do. All of these programs are designed to cut energy consumption and costs for ratepayers across the board. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah?
Jennifer, two things. Are you going to be, we have a bacon festival coming up this Sunday. Are you going to have a booth there?
This is the first I've heard of it. It sounds very interesting.
It attracts a lot of people.
I
Yeah,
bet.
lots.
And we might be able to find a place for you. So if you think you might be interested, let me know. We'll see if we can find a
I
place for
will.
you.
I've got to be honest. We have attended a number of events, and we have actually a waiting list right now for our home energy assessments.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we're waiting on some of our other partners to complete the tools that need to be developed before we can launch that. So I'm kind of
Okay.
holding back on outreach right now because I don't want too many people to be waiting. So if you're watching this, we are going to get to you for those home energy assessments. But if they're interested in signing up for a free energy efficiency kit, they can go to the website and they can get that shipped direct to them. But in the future, we would like to attend future community events.
One other thing, that the kits that you have would be very interesting, especially as a closing gift for someone who's buying a home here. So I'm a realtor. I'm thinking you could reach out to a board of realtors, make your presence known. I'm sure that a lot of my colleagues in this business would love to share that with especially new homeowners. And, hey, if you're looking at ways to cut costs, because you're going to be, dealing with a mortgage and crazy energy bills, that's a great
Right.
way to kind of leverage into that.
That sounds like a great idea. For the kits, the only requirement is to provide the service agreement ID number off their PG&E bill, which if they're buying a home, they're going to have that for sure. And the kit, just with the 8 light bulbs alone, will save on average about $200 a year, just with those 8 bulbs. So I think that's a good start, especially if someone has a new mortgage. So I will definitely look into that, and I appreciate the suggestion.
I had a question as well. You mentioned that some of these programs are already available and some of them are currently in progress. Do you have a target date for when all programs should be available?
They should be all available by 2026. And to be clear, the NREN programs are specific to Lake County and the other counties within the NREN. There are other existing energy efficiency programs out there, but for example, for the rebates, this is money that's set aside specifically for Lake County folks.
Thank you.
And our funding currently, PUC approved, runs through the end of 2027, and then we hope to file a new business plan and have another 4 years of funding after that. So we hope to be working in the county for many years into the future.
Thanks, Brandon. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No, right
Yeah.
behind you there.
Oh.
Hey, Margot Kambara. Thanks for bringing terrific opportunity and news to Lake County. I have a few questions and maybe some suggestions. Let's go in order. Starting with the residential program, heat pumps, that is terrific for residents. How about leveraging economies of scale? Say if we can get a whole street or a neighborhood interested, is that something NREN could take advantage of so we can bring the cost even lower to residents?
Thank you for the question. It's possible. I mentioned earlier, we're looking at doing what we call direct install, more focused on the commercial sector, where we might be able to do, purchase a number of, for example, heat pump water heaters and outfit a certain number of buildings. So it's a possibility. I'm not so sure for the residential, but I'm not saying that it won't happen. But I like this suggestion.
Staying on, well, let's go to commercial since that's the focus of the program. How timely. Last month, this body heard an update on the renovation of this building, the senior center. And I asked the capital projects manager whether he knew whether there was a heat pump involved. He couldn't remember off the top of his head, but say it's not involved. Is that something NREN could help us get installed and purchased?
Very likely. Like I said, for the commercial program, not completely designed yet, but possibility for direct install. So for example, senior centers are very high on our list. Actually, a number of the senior centers I've spoken to have already had solar and battery storage and upgrades, but for ones like this that have not, this could be a potential target for us in a good way of a direct install for heat pump technologies. Absolutely.
Sorry, one more. On residential, it's mainly geared to the individual home owner. What about the rental market? Say somebody who's renting a home, you're going to need the landlord to provide the PG&E bill? No, the account would be in the renter's name, right?
So I would say for renters, that's a very good point. So the energy efficiency kits are for anyone who has a PG&E bill. So depending on your situation, some folks do have their utilities paid by the landlord, but a lot of people do not. So as long as you have a PG&E account with a service agreement ID number, which means you have a meter, then you're eligible, because of course this is ratepayer funding and it's approved by the Public Utilities Commission, and there's a lot of reporting, as you can imagine, involved. So with renters, if they have their own PG&E bill, they would be eligible to receive the kit. And then the landlord, if they can talk to the landlord, they would be eligible for residential rebates on that building. And for the residential program, it's up to 4 units for residential that they would be eligible for the rebates. And the home energy assessment as well, which is really focused on, what we'll do is we'll ask a series of questions, and then you will get a free report as a result with very specific recommendations that you can undertake and prioritize in that residence.
Tom Lacey again. When this was presented at the board a few weeks ago, in the kit you mentioned there was a smart power strip. I didn't catch, is that still included in the kit? And if you can describe what that does, I think that's pretty great.
Yes, in the kit, there's a smart power strip, and the way it works is that you can plug in, let's say if you have a TV center or, a hub in your home, and you have a TV and you have a lot of things that are plugged in, you can plug those things into the smart strip, and then you can turn that off with one switch. Now, turning that off will stop the power flowing, because about half of the power that flows to devices and TVs happen when you're not using them. So this will shut that down in one flip, instead of unplugging all of your, or if you have a bunch of small appliances in the kitchen or that type of thing. So every kit that we're getting now does have the smart power strip. That's a good question.
All right, well, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
All right. Brad, you want to reintroduce? Sure. Thank you.
So I believe the last item will be Mr. Lloyd Guintivano. He is our Chief County Counsel for Lake County, and he's here to provide Brown Act training for your council tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Good evening. So, as Vice Chair Rasmussen said, I'm Lloyd Guintivano, the County Counsel for the County of Lake. Really, by and large, this is more of a presentation of Brown Act, of the Brown Act, highlights of the Brown Act. Going to cover a number of topics, and just feel free to interrupt me with any questions, because I know sometimes if I defer those questions to a later point, sometimes they get lost along the way. So I'm more than happy to just stop, midpoint to address any questions you may have. And so to begin the slide, and also any questions afterwards too. So I'm happy to answer them, or try to answer them at least. So Brown Act, just gonna cover the background first. It's authored by Ralph Milton Brown, who was an assembly member in the Central Valley. It was passed in 1953 to safeguard the public's right to access and participate in government meetings within the state. And the specific code sections of the Brown Act is located on Government Code Sections 54950 and 54963. So why is it in place? And what is the intent, legislative intent, and just the general intent of the Brown Act? I'm not going to read this verbatim. It's there, and it's, with the recording, it's publicly available, and if you need copies of it, I'll have copies of the same slides as well. But just to highlight a few things, the general public insist on remaining informed so that they may retain control over the instruments they have created. That's one of the intents behind the Brown Act. And so the general sort of thrust or theme of the Brown Act is to have all meetings of a legislative body, of a local agency, to be open and public, and all persons shall be permitted to attend any meeting of the legislative body of a local agency. But there are exceptions, and that's within the Brown Act as well, and we'll cover those. Continuing into this theme of intent, it's to ensure that deliberations and actions of legislative bodies of a local government agency are open and public. Kind of mentioned that already. And also, just to highlight, the business conducted on behalf of the public is most certainly the public's business. So that's sort of the general theme, general intent behind all these provisions under the Brown Act. So we start with who is subject to the Brown Act. Well, they have certain specific definitions. The term legislative body or legislative body of a local agency is used a lot. It's littered all over the place in the Brown Act. But generally, it refers to all governing board of local government agencies. It applies to this council because this council is the advisory and standing subcommittees created by such governing boards, i.e. the County of Lake. It also applies to all boards, committees, and bodies created by federal or state law. And then in the Brown Act, it keeps there's a recurring reference to a meeting. I think I mentioned it a few times already, even in the background. So what is a meeting? A meeting is a majority of the members of a legislative body present at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate government business. It is also defined as a congregation of a majority of the members, which involves any aspect of that decision-making process that triggers Brown Act requirements. So when they use the word majority for the council's purposes, that would be 3 out of 5. So at least 3, that would constitute a meeting under this criteria, within these parameters that's set out. For instance, same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate government business. There are some exceptions under that definition of what might at the onset be initially considered as a meeting, but there are carve-out exceptions to that, right? Because even if you have at least 3, depending on the type of event, depending on the type of discussion to some extent, it would not count as a quote unquote meeting that would trigger Brown Act requirements. And among them are conferences, trainings, and seminars, community forums and the meetings of other government bodies, social occasions. Even if it is not a meeting, depending on the type of discussion that occurs, even within these categories, it may still trigger a Brown Act, the requirements of a Brown Act. Where, for example, if there is a social occasion, but within the social occasion there is a discussion of certain topics that is within your council's purview, for instance, arguably someone may argue that that would be a meeting. It's not so much a social occasion depending on what's being talked about, right? So a lot of it goes into the substance of the meeting. So there's always sort of a theme of caution, right? Whenever you have 3 or more, because that's the default. In your council's case, it's 3 out of 5. That's the majority, and so even within these categories, there should be some exercise of caution as well, depending on what's being talked about in those events. Right? So this particular slide goes into the type of communications that may occur, that may trigger some Brown Act requirements. Or that may trigger the requirements of the Brown Act. Generally speaking, essentially, electronic means or devices. I mean, that is pretty broadly construed. Telephones, of course, emails would be part of it. Video conferences would count as well. So a majority of the members may not use telephone, all these electronic means or devices to develop a consensus agreement or decision. Outside of a regular meeting, because when that happens, that triggers the Brown Act requirements, and therefore, it may arguably count as a quote-unquote serial meeting of sorts, where it should have taken place in a formalized regular or special meeting, not in this particular manner where it's just email discussions or a group forum discussions that's occurring online that involves 3 or more members, right? Also goes to other things that would need to be avoided. So this covers this sort of the manner of how a serial meeting may come about, and I want to highlight the 3rd bullet point there. There's really 2 types of serial meetings. You have the hub and the spoke arrangement. You see it here, A to B, where A and the letters represent members of the legislative body. A to B has a communication, A to C, and A to D. Who's the hub? It's A. The spokes, the recipients of the spokes are B, C, and D. And if those communications involve the same topic that is within the legislative body's purview for discussion, that would be a serial meeting, even if it occurs at different points in time. So that is one model for of what a serial meeting may consist of. The other model is what they call a chain communication, or in some instances they call it a daisy chain communication, where you have member A to B and then B to C. So it's not a hub and spoke, but it's a chain of sorts, again, involving the same topic of discussion that is within the legislative body's purview. And that can also lead to a collective concurrence, and if it does, that would be a serial meeting, and the Brown Act would require that it occur in a regular meeting, right? Yeah.
So basically, any one of us could put an agenda item, or request an agenda item for the next meeting, but the discussion has to happen within the meeting. You can't call any one of the members and say, I want to talk about this, and these are the key topics we need to talk about. You want that discussion to be in this forum, not in between any of the committee council members.
It can occur that way, where I've seen in some committees, in some bodies, they talk about what to talk about in the next meeting at a regular meeting, but it's not necessary. It's when you get into a substantive discussion of the topic, as opposed to just agendizing it, just for the purposes of putting it on the agenda. Any one of the members could, put it in one way, sponsor an item. They bring up an item, and I'm not sure who is in charge of putting things in the agenda. Could be another board member there. But the item itself, I was just, proposing an item that an item be put in the agenda without any further discussion, that can take place outside of a regular or
And
special
that can take
meeting.
place with between more than 2 members of the body?
Oh, that, where, I would say as long as no substantive discussions take place regarding the item itself.
So
Where if
if-
it's just about the topic.
If it's just
discussion-
about I'm sorry, if it's just about putting it on the agenda?
Yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
So
Yeah.
as a scenario, say Arnold sends out the agenda
Right,
to all of us.
yes.
And then one of us responds, okay if we put this on the agenda?
Well,
Without discussion, just say, hey, I'd like to put this on the agenda. if
like
that's
adding
okay.
another item in the proposed agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, now normally, what my advice to that would be to, well, it sounds like the way it's arranged is there's one person among the board, no staff, but just one person among the board who collates or collects what's gonna be on the agenda for the next meeting, correct? And that person just gets the agenda item from,
De facto, I guess.
right.
Right now, that's kind of the way it works, right?
Okay, so,
Yeah.
So under that arrangement, that is okay, so that if somebody wants to add another item in the agenda, part of it is timing. I would say, because there are deadline requirements, right? For regular agenda items, it's 72 hours, right? If someone wants to add that and we're less than 72 hours away from a regular meeting, there's ways to do that even, right? Putting it as an extra item. But if we're well within if we're well above the 72 hours, then it's no different from any other member proposing to put another item, right? It doesn't really hinge on what's already on the agenda, unless there's some duplication involved, in which the point person for that would be the one handling it's a duplicative item, so maybe we should just have them as one, right? So that's the purpose of the person who's collecting the agenda item. So I guess the short answer to that is, if there is an additional item to be put in the agenda, it should still follow the same protocols. If it's above 72 hours for a regular meeting, just submit it to the point person, and that person collects that just strictly for agendizing purposes. No discussion of the substance whatsoever, and then we
Right,
go from there.
okay. So that's how we've been doing it, at least the past few months.
Yeah, and it's probably best not to hit reply all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably best
So
what?
that-
not to hit reply all,
Oh, yeah.
which I'm famous for.
yeah.
That's the danger of a serial meeting.
Yeah. So it's best I just would call you and tell you, hey.
Yeah.
Arnold, we need to do this.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if he calls him and then later calls me and then calls her, then we got a meeting,
A
right?
serial meeting.
But hopefully calling not about the same agenda item or same topic that's being
could be.
submitted
Well,
as an
this is
agenda
what
item.
My point
Right.
is that if he is, or if one of us was pushing something like that, then we're into that meeting.
Serial. We just went over it. We went over the.
Yeah, that clock is late and slow.
Okay. So, holding of I think we covered that. Well, this one is straightforward enough. It kind of touched on what we already discussed. Polling of members of a legislative body by a member. I mean, either through staff or the individual itself. Not because that is a serial meeting, substantive discussions, right? I don't know if it applies to this council, if your council has staff, but if it, okay, so that doesn't really apply here. can meet individually with members under certain parameters, certain conditions. Now, I kind of covered this at the onset, 72 hours for posting in advance and sent to persons who have submitted a request to receive a notice for regular meetings. Special meetings are 24 hours. Emergency meetings, 1 hour in advance. There's other requirements there, like submitting it to the news media. And a notice, of course, all of these notices must be posted in an accessible location and on the local entity's website if it has one. So each agenda item has to have a brief description to be discussed, including closed session items, but closed sessions get to be pretty specific. The descriptions must be clear enough to be understandable by members of the public. And of course, the time, each agenda for a regular meeting must include time for public comment. I'll get into that more because I think there's a slide dedicated to that. And this is just a general sort of again, concept of why are these requirements in place. It's a promise made to the public by the legislative body that this is what's going to be discussed within boundary, and what's going to be discussed is within the boundaries of the agenda item. They can't bring in things or issues or statements outside the boundaries of what's actually being presented, right? It can't be off topic. The description of an agenda item is generally provided in 20 words or less. That's to keep it concise. And it has to be sufficient enough to allow the public to determine whether they wish to participate, right? And that's going on the agenda notice. So generally, no action or discussion shall be taken on any item not appearing on the agenda, except, of course, there's always exceptions, response to public input, and I'll get into that, between the distinction between public comment and public input. Making reports of activities or announcements, which is one of the items here. We have one of those items here. Asking staff, if you have staff, but it doesn't really apply. If in the event you have staff, report back on a matter. That's like direction to staff. So the legislative body, such as your council, may take action on an item not appearing on the posted agenda if there is an emergency or a need to take immediate action which came to the attention of the legislative body after the agenda was posted, within those timelines, right? 72 hours for a regular meeting, 24 hours for a special meeting. These are called extra items. So these are for the items that have come up after the agenda is posted, and it's come up then, there's an immediate need to take it up. It can't be taken up at the next meeting, so that in itself becomes an item for your board to take up the extra item. And then if your board approves it by motion, then the item gets taken up. Is that me again? Okay. All right, location of the meetings. So it has to be within the boundaries of the jurisdiction of the government entity, such as this location here. There are exceptions, as always. Inspection of real and personal property, meeting with federal and state officials, so your whole council can do that. Holding closed session with legal counsel, so that's another exception there. But generally speaking, outside of those exceptions, within the boundaries or jurisdiction, essentially Lake County. So just to keep it streamlined. So now we have the rights of the public. The public has the right to address the legislative body on both agendized items and non-agenda items. So for the agendized items, that's public comment. For the non-agendized items, that's public input. The suggestion here would be to designate those two as separate items. So you have because you have items 1 through 7 here, just dedicate one for public comment for things on the agenda. You certainly can do that. For the ones for items that are not on the agenda, dedicate a separate item for that, so that the distinction can be made.
So really quick, we're technically in violation by not allowing public comment on non-agendized items on our agendas currently?
Well, the way it actually played out, like in this meeting, right? I think it was a mix of things. There were comments that are not on the agenda, that were not on items not on the agenda, and there were comments made by members of the public that were made on the agenda.
We've been allowing non-agendized items anyway.
Yeah.
So you know, it's just a cleaner way. And if you see the County of Lake's, how the County of Lake Board of Supervisors conduct their meetings, it's a little different because there's a lot of items, and it's actually done. It actually satisfies the policies and procedures that were approved by the County of Lake Board of Supervisors, which is for the agendized item, they take up every single agenda item, and then they do public comment for each and every single one, right? And, and your council can certainly do that as well. So there's some flexibility here, but certainly as a baseline, my suggestion would be to designate separate items for public comment, for agendized items, and then public input for non-agendized items, right?
Never heard it put that way. That's a good way to
Yeah,
put it.
because
Yeah.
we can't discuss anything that isn't on the agenda. Like, they can talk to us.
No, I
Oh, yeah.
I know that. What I meant was, I've never heard at the very beginning where they could talk about non-agenda items. That's what I've always thought we should have on here, but I didn't know it was called public input. I always see it on the, like, supervisors, that you say public comment.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
can listen to that, we just can't talk about it.
Yeah, we'll put it on the
Yeah, no,
agenda
that's
at
pretty-
the end.
That's pretty clear. We can't act on it.
Yeah, correct.
But
For the
we may
non-agendized.
learn something new that we could, down the road, make an agenda item and then talk about acting on it.
Yeah, at a future meeting, yes.
Right.
Yes.
I think we heard tonight that some of the biggest complaints with our agenda is the lack of visibility to the public. Is that what I'm understand? I mean, we've got,
What I heard was that it was hard to find and
okay,
that the online link wasn't easy to access.
okay.
That's what I heard.
And what were the other concerns about the agenda that we heard tonight?
The other
Was it-
the other concerns that we heard were that there wasn't any explicit call out for non-agendized items to be
Right.
discussed.
Uh-huh.
So I think including that in our agenda would clear up some of those frustrations. 'Cause I know we've heard in multiple meetings now that they want to be able to bring announcements or community events or something like that to this board as just a general FYI for the public.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay, so we got some room to improve.
No, I mean, it's just reconfiguring, just putting public input up here.
Well,
And
yeah.
then after each agenda item, you have public comment.
Yeah, and non-agendized item, we'll put at the end this way, because, we're not going to speak about it anyway, so.
Well, typically, okay. All right.
It could be done anywhere. Some of our councils do it at the very end.
Yeah,
for
my,
public input.
Yeah, I know
It's up
math,
to
that,
your
yeah.
council.
the thing is, if you put it at the beginning, some people just want to come and make a public comment about a particular issue. That way, just like Lake County City Council, I think you guys do it at the beginning as well. That way, they don't have to sit through the whole meeting waiting to get to public comment.
Aren't we trying to get them to sit through the whole meeting?
If that's what you want. I mean, I don't want to force anybody to sit through a meeting they don't want to sit through. But you know what? You guys can argue that, or do whatever you want. The other thing I think what was saying up here was, if we wanted, oh no, it has to be 72 hours. If we wanted, like I noticed in some of like the supervisors or city council, they'll ask, is everybody okay with all the agenda items? So we could delete an agenda item with majority, right? If we decided not to.
Yes, it can always.
We could pull an
pull it
agenda item
for a later date.
That's 2/3 of the vote, right?
Right. But you can't.
No? Did I miss? Okay.
If, like, it really depends on the situation. Like,
Okay.
say, the sponsor of the item, right, puts it in the agenda for a regular meeting. And then it turns out on the date of the meeting,
He
for
can't.
whatever reason, not ready. No
Right.
documents, then it pulls. So the sponsor of that can just pull that item to a later date. Yes, it could be it can be more formalized if you have a specific date in mind to continue this specific item to such and such a date. But it is within your council's discretion also to just pull. We're not ready because we're not ready to present that item. The sponsor could just pull it and say, I'm not ready yet, maybe in the future, and would not necessarily require a motion. However, what I would say is, it would be good practice to even when you're pulling items at the meeting itself, to allow for public comment. Because there may be members of the public who would want to speak on the item and may have concerns about pulling it, so give them an opportunity
So
to
still
speak.
on that agenda, have a public comment. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, really, my thing was just public input. I would like to see us learn from.
And those things, like as far as, setting up protocols, procedures, right, of where public input should be, how public comment is going to be handled. I mean, that can be that in itself can be an item for your council.
Yeah.
Maybe through the bylaws, we got to look into that. If you want it more formalized that way, and again, by virtue of it being an item, say in the future for possible discussion, again, members of the public can have their say about that. Say if it's a good idea or not. Maybe they might have some other suggestions, and then eventually that can be an action item also for your council in whether or not to say incorporate it in your bylaws or your internal procedures of sorts, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So rights of the public. Continuing on with the rights of the public, I already covered the having it open to the public except for closed sessions, right? Gotta accommodate for gotta be ADA compliant. Accommodate the if disabled to ensure access and participation. Written materials, they have to be made available to anyone who may request them, say pursuant to a records request. So any materials that your board may have received in the meeting itself, those would have to be made available upon request. That would include the agenda notice, even though it's posted, in certain places. Somebody might request it at a future point in time. That it needs to be provided. Members of the public can they have the ability they are able to audio and video record. Because it is a public meeting, unless doing so creates a disturbance. So they are allowed to do that unless it causes a disturbance. So then we get into closed session. Just to kind of preface this thing, much of the closed session items would not necessarily apply for this council. There may be a few rare instances where your council may need to take up a closed session item, but because your council consists of members and the council itself was created and appointed, members of which were appointed by the County Lake Board of Supervisors, you'll see that when I go through these categories, in most instances, any closed session items will probably be taken up by the board that may relate to your council. There may be some exceptions there. I've seen some exceptions, but I'll go through them here, and they have, much like the open session items, they got to have a brief description, and that's, there's dedicated statutes that would outline what words need to be there or what needs to be conveyed for each closed session item. There has to be a pre-closed session announcement that we're going into closed session, if it applies. Strict confidentiality of closed session must be preserved. There's a reason why they call it closed, because it's to retain the confidentiality aspects of it, only in certain categories, right? Otherwise, it's open. It's open. It must be open to the public, but there are several of these closed session exceptions that's not available to the public. Personnel, I'll go through some of the examples here. Personnel matters. Here's one example. Maybe it doesn't apply here because, again, council doesn't have staff, right? For the evaluation, discipline, and dismissal of an employee, right? Labor negotiations, again, doesn't apply so much on this council, but that is one closed session category. Pending litigation, may or may not apply. Very rare circumstance to have it apply to committees. And then real property negotiations, for a negotiating team, in this case of the legislative body, to deal with certain purchase proposals to purchase, sale, or lease of it or exchange of identified real property that a legislative body would want to participate in. Security of public facilities and services. Certainly, if there's an issue regarding that topic, that can be a subject in closed session. Not to the public. And there's plenty of other exceptions, but I highlighted some of the ones that come up quite more regularly than others. Violations of the Brown Act, this is another topic, separate topic. First and foremost, it can lead to an invalidation of the agency's actions. So if your council takes action, but then the lead up to that action, there was a defect that was identified that was subject to a challenge under the Brown Act, that can be a result of that, where whatever that specific action then becomes void or invalidated. There's also, if they take it far enough, payment of a challenger's attorney's fees, and then civil liability if they take it up to court via writ of mandate, or criminal liability even under a misdemeanor, which would count as a misdemeanor. So we get into the next topic, which is teleconferencing under the Brown Act. And it is not that simple. So to preface all this, the way to get around these, and teleconferencing essentially relates to the issue of if any one of your members here would want to appear remotely, either by video, Zoom, not sure if it's allowed by telephone, but some kind of telecom. Right. So it may not apply here because I'll tell you, to preface all this, the safest way to avoid all these requirements, this criteria, and it could get pretty complicated, is to just appear in person. You appear in person, you don't even need to worry about any of these. So I'll kind of do that's kind of the suggestion here. But of course, if there is a need, and sometimes there may be a situation where you only have 3, and then one person, for whatever reason, under an emergency circumstance, needs to appear remotely, right? So in those rare circumstances, we have 2 of these categories: traditional teleconferencing, where agendas must be posted at all teleconference locations. So whoever's going to be out there remotely, you got to post the agenda there, and that location must be available and accessible to the public as well. So that's under this category of traditional teleconferencing. Then you have teleconferencing under 361, AB 361, that was enacted or adopted in January 1, 2024. You can do teleconferencing without complying with the Brown Act's teleconferencing quorum, meeting notice, and agenda in very specific circumstances. So what would that be? Generally speaking, if there's a proclaimed state of emergency, that's pretty much those bullet points there. So that is the starting point for that. Then you can get over the traditional teleconferencing of being remote but making it accessible to the public and posting the agenda on that remote location, right? So then you also have this other category of teleconferencing under Assembly Bill 2449, adopted in January. Well, this is good until January 1, 2026, until further notice by the state legislature. I think there's a couple of bills in the works, but as it stands, this is still in place, where it would allow a member to do teleconferencing under specific requirements without having to make the remote location be available to any member of the public, posting agendas at that remote location. That the typical requirements of traditional teleconferencing would not necessarily apply here if there's several requirements here. At least a quorum of the members, so at least 3, must participate in person. So at least 3 of them must be in person in order for at least 1 to be remote. And that location, of course, like this one, should be, that physical location should be open to the public. And then legislative body must provide a 2-way audiovisual platform similar to Zoom, Teams, where the public can interact, right? Provide comments. You have to give notice to the public for means to access the meeting. There's several requirements under this 2449. You got to identify and include an opportunity for all persons to attend and address the legislative body, provide an opportunity for the public to address the legislative body and offer comment in real time. That's like Zoom. Zoom would allow that, right? You see that in the County Lake Board of Supervisors meeting, right? And then under 2449, once you've satisfied those requirements, the person who is doing remote appearance can do it with just cause. And has to provide a general description of the circumstances relating to their need to appear remotely at the given meeting. And so I'll get into the definition of just cause because that is the main criteria for that person who would be remotely appearing. The other requirements are the member requests the legislative body to allow them to participate in the meeting due to emergency circumstances. That is... I don't know. Okay, I'll expedite this. So I think as a rule of thumb, if any one of the committee or council members is planning to do a remote appearance and, well, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Please contact my office because you have all these requirements here. There's a lot of hoops to go through. They're ever changing, and so I think the last one is really, yeah, it is disruptions, right? In a meeting. That's under Senate Bill 1100. Any person, member of the public, any person participating in the meeting, if they engaged in behavior during a meeting that disrupts, disturbs, or impedes or renders infeasible the orderly conduct, first, the long and short of it is your council needs to provide a warning first, right? The warning should consist of, well, please stop what you're doing, you're disrupting the meeting. Otherwise, you'll be kicked out. And then if they still engage in that same behavior, then that person, can be, to eliminate the disruption, can be excluded, right? So it also gets into the true threat of force as one in which a reasonable observer would perceive as an actual threat. That's the other category there, as a basis for excluding someone from a meeting. So I think that covers it, unless you have any other questions for me. And if there are any questions, either now or in the future, my office is always available for any questions related to this. Yeah, I'm always available.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you,
Thank you.
council.
Okay.
And with that,
Is it on the agenda?
Well, since we're talking about the Brown Act and the agenda, like maybe a couple of suggestions. If you start it with public comment, public input, and then you could have public comment and input after each item, but you may want to have a standing agenda item for KBA updates. You might want to put on the next agenda defining the council roles, who's the chair, who's vice chair, so that you have a better understanding of who's responsible. I don't think there is one because we've had a dramatic turnover. Appreciate all of you. And then at the end of the agenda, a next or future agenda, an item that says, what should we talk about next time, future agendas. And I think that will help give some more flexibility.
I agree.
Into
Under public input, should that be public input and announcements? Just so, say a Rotary Club, Kelseyville Rotary wants to make an announcement about an event coming up or something.
Exactly. Cawberry Council has them as separate, but you can have them as public input and agenda items,
Seems like it might save time.
things like that. It's whatever you want. But those are kind of a couple of the suggestions that I thought might be helpful.
I love it.
So I got one more question here on agendas. So let's say I ask to add something onto the agenda, but I can't be the presenter of that item. Is that correct?
You can present it.
I can present?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're the sponsor.
I don't know why I was led to believe that I couldn't present. I could
No, you
only ask to have something put on, but I couldn't. My mouth is almost in this thing.
He's talking to Mark.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's like you guys. You'll have a passion project and you want it put on the agenda to talk about,
Yes,
correct? And you
yeah.
present it. Bruno's had his things, Jessica's
Yes,
had hers.
council member can do that.
Yeah.
But the last thing I was going to say is, because we do have new members, I don't know who all, have you read your bylaws for this committee? If you haven't looked at the bylaws, that would be a good idea to review before the next meeting, because it outlines how your meeting is supposed to operate. So it's got some good information in there. I just reviewed it when
Where
when
are
that
those
training
bylaws?
was, so
Are
it's
they in
on the
there?
county website.
Okay.
So if you look, I just Googled Big Valley Advisory Council bylaws and it popped right up.
Oh, okay.
But the County of Lake has a web page that has all of our committees on it.
Good, good.
And
All
then in those separate committees, there's 60 or so of them, you can find yours. That's where your agendas are. Your bylaws are also going to be there. And so it would be a good idea to just take a look at that.
And so you want to have the Zoom information on, but if Zoom goes down and you've committed to the public that you're going to be providing Zoom, then you can't have a meeting. So you want to word it in a way, and Lloyd, you can speak on this, that Zoom is provided, but it's not required.
But thankfully,
So I have a statement, so I think this is the workaround for it. When you do your agenda, you say chat enabled. Therefore, Zoom's pretty, it's the part where they're able to talk back is where we encounter the problems. Zoom itself hasn't gone down. Tonight it did, and that's why we heard those awful noises, because Zoom, nobody attended, Zoom just shuts off.
but it was streaming on YouTube.
Yes,
But YouTube doesn't provide feedback.
correct.
Right.
Yeah. So if you have Zoom, you can participate in Zoom, then you're required to have Zoom running. Say you could view the meeting.
Say it's available, but so
Just-
you can continue to read it the right language so you don't have to stop.
Does that work though? If by saying chat is enabled?
That is. So if your council wants to allow that feature where it's chat enabled, but no one can provide comment via audio, then that would put your council in a position where it may need to address chat comments like verbatim, right? So what Vice Chair Rasmussen and Supervisor Paiska is suggesting as an option here would be similar to what the County of Lake supervisors had, and the language is there, where Zoom is a form of convenience for anyone who may be participating in it, so that if there are any interruptions or if Zoom goes down, that's basically the disclaimer that the meeting can still go on, so that if that's in the agenda or if that's in the notice, right, then everyone who decides to participate in Zoom is then made aware that, okay, if there's internet problems, if there's connectivity issues, then the meeting might still go on. I presume that the meeting is recorded and posted online anyway, so that it'll be available there as well, and that language is built in there. I can provide that. Well, it's there on the agenda, every agenda now.
So recording is always, right?
Yeah.
As long as we have power, that's the only, as long as we have power, then we have a record.
Yeah.
But use the exact language off the board agenda, or Lloyd can give it to you.
Yeah.
Will the bylaws tell us if we have to make a decision? Okay. What?
You're professionals now, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. No, I am. In fact, I'm going to email everybody after this meeting that what a great.
All right. I think we can adjourn this.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Hey, thank you guys. Thank you guys for.
7:30 meeting adjourned.